2020, a record-breaking 189 people were victims of homicide in Milwaukee. Each life lost, an individual who left behind family and friends right here in our community, who are now trying to cope. Our Ryan Jenkins goes 360 to hear from those in our community about the challenge of trying to disrupt this disturbing trend in the year ahead.
Guns, reckless driving, and domestic violence, all just a few factors that contributed to a record-breaking year for homicides in our community. But why in 2020, and what needs to happen to interrupt that rising trend of violence in 2021? To answer these questions, we're going 360. We speak to Milwaukee moms who have lost their children, to those who back the blue and say police are being spread too thin, to those on the streets going door to door pushing to end the violence, and to the city's director of the Office of Violence Prevention, who is calling for urgent policy changes.
We buried Sandy September the 12th.
We start with Rosemary Coleman. Her daughter, Sandra Smith, was driving home from work near Silver Spring in Fond du Lac in late August when she was killed. Today, Rosemary still waits for answers, not knowing much other than the fact that Sandra's death was ruled a homicide.
She was innocent to whatever was going on.
Sandra was an MATC student working 2 jobs to fund her education. Just 2 days after she was buried, her mom received this letter. Sandra made the school's dean's list, an accomplishment that pushed Rosemary to begin working with United Garden Homes Incorporated to establish a scholarship in Sandra's name, a touch of positivity that can't cover up the reality of 189 homicides in 2020.
Every time we hear this, it opens back up those wounds that we're trying to heal.
For Rosemary and for so many other Milwaukee families, there is no escape from the violence.
It is a constant form of being re-traumatized.
Just ask Chantel Riley. She lost her son, Javantez, to gun violence back in 2016. After 4 years of improving homicide trends in Milwaukee between 2015 and 2019, she calls this year's record-breaking spike disheartening.
It's very disheartening. It's very traumatizing to actually know that these numbers are actually increasing and we don't have a solution to it.
Chantel, now training to become a grief counselor to help others in the community cope, is looking ahead to 2021, advocating for community resources who she says are vital to curbing violence and breaking generations of pain in our community. She says community outreach efforts must be funded because they reach not only those directly targeted by violence, but also those who are left behind after a homicide, specifically the victim's family and friends.
We don't need more police. We need more community programs. We need more community support. We need more community resources so we don't have to continue to function in survival mode all the time.
Dale Borman sees things differently. He's the president of the Milwaukee Police Association.
Our officers are being spread extremely thin already, and to be down another 120 officers, 150 officers, they're going to be spread even more thin. And they're tired.
He says officers in Milwaukee are not respected. Many of them are retiring or looking for jobs elsewhere. In Milwaukee, a shrinking budget could cut 150 officers, meaning there may be fewer people to investigate crimes.
It seems like right now it's the officers that are doing all the work to solve these crimes, and we're not getting help from citizens.
Because of this, Borman warns 2021 could be just as deadly as 2020. It's a concern also felt by Deslyn Smith. She works with United Garden Homes Incorporated and 414 Life, 2 anti-violence groups that work to mediate violence by going door to door, connecting resources to people who need them, and often intervening in situations before things turn deadly. She says community resources are also spread too thin. The impacts of the COVID-19 virus shaking the economy and making it tougher to go door to door to reach people directly.
On top of the record-breaking homicides, we have, I think the biggest trauma right now is the fear of the unknown with the COVID.
Deslyn says the connections that anti-violence organizations make in the community are vital to interrupting crimes like homicides. But these trends amid the ongoing pandemic are taking a toll.
Every other day is some tragic story, and then when it hits closer and closer to your street, to your family, to someone you grew up with, that takes a toll on us.
Reggie Moore with Milwaukee's Office of Violence Prevention suggests the solution may fall into the hands of lawmakers.
We would like to see policymakers respond to gun violence with the same level of urgency, focus, and commitment as was seen in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Gun violence has been a pandemic for a very long time.
He says in order for Milwaukee to be able to return to the momentum we saw in the 4 years leading up to 2020, when homicide rates were dropping, there's a need for policy change.
We've seen through this pandemic what the country can do, how it can pull together, how it can invest in research, how it can invest in programs and services to provide safety nets, to implement moratoriums on evictions, to protect vulnerable families. These are all things that need to be brought to bear in terms of our commitment and strategy around violence in our city.
An urgent call for local policymakers to act now to help fight current deadly trends and fight for a more peaceful 2021. Ryan Jenkins, TMJ4 News.
And Reggie Moore said Milwaukee's 2021 budget includes investments that allow 414 Life to expand to new neighborhoods. Moore hopes these expansions and other new programs being developed can help curb violence.